Last week, my mother walked into my house, carrying homemade cookies and wearing a smile I hadn't seen in over a year. My father stood behind her, dressed like he was closing a business deal. My sister, Madison, kept checking her phone, barely making eye contact. They weren't there because they missed me. They were there because they wanted my $3 million inheritance, and I was about to destroy every single one of their plans. Before we dive into this story of family betrayal and the sweetest legal revenge you'll ever hear, do me a favor, hit that like button if you've ever dealt with greedy family members who only show up when there's money involved. And make sure you watch till the very end, because I'll be sharing my opinion on whether Virginia was right or wrong. Now, let's get into it. The doorbell rang at exactly 2:00 on a Saturday afternoon. I wasn't expecting anyone, but when I opened the door, there they were, Gloria, my mother, holding a decorative tin of cookies like we were best friends, Gerald, my father, with his practiced corporate smile, and Madison, my older sister, dressed in business casual like this was a board meeting and not a family visit. Virginia. Mom's voice was syrupy sweet, the kind of tone you use with strangers. "We've missed you so much. Can we come in?" I stepped aside because what else could I do? They filed into my living room, the house they'd never once visited since I bought it 3 years ago. They'd never helped with the down payment, never asked to see the place, never cared. But now they were here, and they were complimenting everything: the hardwood floors, the crown molding, the view from the bay window. It felt wrong, like wearing someone else's skin. We sat down, this awkward arrangement of people who shared DNA but nothing else. Mom placed the cookies on my coffee table. Dad crossed his legs, casual, comfortable, like he'd been here 100 times. Madison kept glancing around, probably calculating property values in her head. The small talk lasted maybe 5 minutes: weather, traffic, Madison's new job, all surface-level nonsense. And I could feel it building, the real reason they were here, pressing against their teeth, desperate to escape. Finally, Dad leaned forward. His expression shifted into something I recognized from my childhood, the look he gave clients when he wanted something. "So, Virginia," he said, voice warm and conspiratorial, "we've been thinking. It's been 2 years since Grandma Evelyn and Grandpa Austin passed. We thought maybe it was time we all sat down and discussed the estate. You know, the inheritance, the property." There it was. The mask slipped just enough for me to see the hunger, the entitlement, the calculation. I took a slow sip of my coffee, watching them over the rim of the mug. Mom's smile was frozen in place. Madison had stopped scrolling her phone. They were all watching me, waiting, like vultures circling something they thought was already dead. Inside, I was smiling because I knew something they didn't, something that was going to break their hearts. When Grandma Evelyn called and asked me to come to the coastal house, her voice sounded different, fragile, like she was carrying something heavy. I drove the 2 hours along the shoreline, past the cliffs and the winding roads I'd memorized as a teenager. This house, this beautiful, sprawling property perched above the ocean, had been my real home, not the cold, empty mansion my parents lived in, where they were always working, always traveling, always too busy. When I was 15, they'd essentially shipped me off to live with my grandparents. Oh, they called it a better school district and more stability. But the truth was simpler: I was in the way. Grandma and Grandpa raised me. They paid for my college. They showed up to every graduation, every milestone, every moment that mattered. They were my parents in every way except biology. When I arrived that day, Grandma's hands shook slightly as she poured tea. Grandpa cleared his throat twice before speaking, the way he did when something was serious. "We need to talk about the future," he said. "About what happens to this place when we're gone." My chest tightened. I didn't want to think about that. "Your father," Grandma said quietly, setting down her teacup, "has called us 3 times this year. He wants to know about our estate plan, the property value, whether we've thought about selling. My stomach dropped. Selling, Grandpa nodded, his jaw tight. He's been researching comparable homes. This property is worth nearly $3 million now. And Gerald, your father, he sees dollar signs, not memories. I felt sick. This house held 6 years of their life together. Every room was a story, every corner a memory. We don't want this to become a bidding war when we're gone, Grandma said, her voice shaking. We don't want your parents and Madison fighting over it, selling it to strangers, erasing everything we built. Grandpa reached across the table and took my hand. We've talked to an estate attorney, sweetheart. We want you to inherit this property. Not your parents, not Madison, you. But we need to do it right so it's bulletproof. Over the next 6 months, I watched my grandparents work with their attorney, a sharp woman named Charlotte Reed, who specialized in estate planning. She was meticulous, recording everything, documenting every step. The plan they created was airtight. They established a revocable living trust while both were alive and fully competent, with extensive medical documentation proving their mental capacity. The coastal property was deeded directly into that trust, removing it entirely from their probate estate. I was named the primary beneficiary, the sole inheritor of the property upon both their deaths. But here's where it got brilliant. They included a no-contest clause. Anyone who challenged the trust would forfeit their inheritance entirely. To make it enforceable, they left my parents and Madison each $50,000, just enough to give them something to lose if they fought. They also set up a charitable remainder provision, giving me the option to convert my inheritance into a charitable trust if I chose. Charlotte recorded multiple video sessions with my grandparents, explaining their wishes, their reasoning, and confirming that no one, especially not me, was pressuring them. Your parents can't touch this, Charlotte told me bluntly during one meeting. It's not in the probate estate. Your grandparents have testamentary freedom, the legal right to leave their property to whomever they choose, as long as they're competent, which they clearly are. This is bulletproof. When Grandma Evelyn died peacefully in her sleep 2 years ago, Grandpa Austin followed 2 months later. I think he couldn't stand being without her. The trust was funded automatically upon their deaths. No probate court, no family negotiation. The property became mine along with a letter they'd written together. Virginia, we raised you. We know your heart. Your parents chose money over family long ago. This home deserves someone who will honor what it meant to us. Do with it what brings you peace. I cried for hours reading those words. The calls from my parents started within 3 days of Grandpa's funeral. Virginia, we need to talk about the estate. There has to be property to divide. It's only fair. What do you mean it's all yours? That can't be legal. I sent them each a copy of the trust document. The calls turned angry. Dad screamed about undue influence and threatened to get lawyers involved. They did hire lawyers, 3 different ones, over 18 months. Each attorney reviewed the trust and told them the same thing. It was legal, properly executed, and unbreakable. If they sued and lost, they'd forfeit their $50,000. Eventually, after 1.5 years of rage and threats and silence, the calls stopped. I thought it was over until last week. Sitting in my living room watching them pretend to care, I realized they'd been planning this. The coordinated visit, the fake warmth, the cookies. So, Mom said, brushing imaginary lint off her designer sleeve, we thought since you've had time to grieve, maybe we could discuss selling the property now. Split it properly as a family. Properly, Madison echoed, her voice sharp beneath the smile. Equal shares, that's only fair. Virginia, I leaned back in my chair, studying them. Split what exactly? Dad's face lit up with relief. He thought I was agreeing. The house, obviously. We've already been contacted by a developer interested in the land. Oceanfront property like that we could get $4 million, maybe more. your share would still be over $1 million after taxes and fees. Your share, like they were doing me a favor. So, you've already found a buyer, I said slowly. Well, we wanted to be prepared, Mom said quickly. Once you agree, we can move fast. Get this handled. Put it all behind us. Madison was nodding eagerly. It's what Grandma and Grandpa would have wanted. Family unity. That word family coming from her mouth felt like a slap. I stood up and walked to my desk. They watched me, confused, as I pulled out a folder and returned to the living room. What's that? Madison frowned. Documents I filed last year, I said calmly, placing the folder on the coffee table. I thought you might want to see what I did with my inheritance. Madison grabbed the folder and opened it. Her eyes scanned the first page, then widened. She flipped faster, reading, her face going pale. This says, her voice cracked, you created a charitable remainder trust. Yes, I said, but the Hawthorne Foundation, named after Grandma's maiden name. I transferred the property into a charitable remainder trust, a CRUT. I receive 5% of the property value annually for the rest of my life as income. When I die, the remainder funds scholarships for low-income students. The silence in the room was suffocating. Dad grabbed the folder from Madison, reading frantically. You gave it away. No, I said. I structured my own inheritance in a way that honors Grandma and Grandpa's values while providing for my future. It was my property. I had full legal authority to do whatever I wanted with it. Mom blinked like I'd spoken a foreign language. But we're family. Family shows up, I said quietly. Family calls. Family cares when there's no money involved. You haven't been my family since I was 15. Madison slammed the folder shut, her face twisted with rage. You can't do this. This is insane. I already did it, 18 months ago. My property, my choice. We'll sue, Dad shouted, standing up. This is fraud. You manipulated them. Go ahead, I said calmly. You consulted 3 lawyers about the original trust. Everyone told you it was legal and unbreakable. This is the same. I owned the property outright. I transferred it legally into a charitable trust. You have no standing, no claim, and no right to challenge my decisions. The room erupted, shouting accusations, threats. Mom was crying, actual tears, probably the first genuine emotion I'd seen from her in years. Madison called me selfish, cruel, ungrateful, but I didn't flinch. You know what the best part is, I said, cutting through the noise. The trust is irrevocable. I can't undo it, so no amount of guilt-tripping, manipulation, or legal threats will change anything. It's done forever. Dad's face went from red to white. You'll regret this. Family comes first. Virginia, I met his eyes. Family comes first when they act like family. Grandma and Grandpa were my family. You were just people I shared DNA with. He had nothing to say to that. They left without another word. Mom grabbed her cookie tin on the way out. Madison slammed the door so hard a picture frame rattled on the wall. And then finally, I was alone. I sat in the silence, my hands shaking, adrenaline coursing through me. I'd done it. I'd actually done it. That evening, I drove to the coastal property. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, and the light hit the windows of my grandparents' house, just right, making the whole place glow. I unlocked the gate and walked through the garden, where Grandma used to plant roses every spring. The ocean breeze smelled like salt and memories. This place was safe, protected, untouchable. The Hawthorne Foundation's first scholarship went out last month, $5,000. To a young woman named Sarah, studying environmental law. Her thank you letter arrived last week. Your generosity changed my life, she wrote. I'm the first person in my family to go to college. Your grandparents would be so proud of what you've built in their name. I cried reading it because she was right. They would be proud. This wasn't about revenge. Not really. It was about protection, about honoring the people who actually loved me by making sure their legacy went to someone who deserved it, not people who only saw dollar signs. My parents can hire more lawyers if they want. They'll hear the same thing every time. I owned it. I transferred it legally. They have no claim. End of story. And that's exactly how Grandma Evelyn and Grandpa Austin would have wanted it. Justice doesn't always look like revenge. Sometimes it looks like a scholarship fund, a protected home, and the peace of knowing you did right by the people who did right by you. Here's what I think. Virginia didn't get revenge. She got justice. Her parents abandoned her at 15, ghosted her for years, then showed up with cookies when there were millions on the table. That's not family, that's opportunism. But she didn't just burn bridges out of spite. She created a scholarship fund that honors her grandparents and helps students like she once was. She secured her own future with that first and the income, while making sure the bulk goes to people who actually deserve it. Was she wrong? Absolutely not. You don't get to abandon someone and then demand their inheritance. The grandparents knew exactly who their son was, and they made sure their legacy went to the right person. What do you think? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you love this story, hit subscribe for more revenge files that proves justice can be both legal and absolutely savage. Trust me, we're just getting started.